Hi and welcome to Whisky Shared. You're watching my review of Stauning Barley Distillery Editions 2024. I'm Toby and you're watching Whisky Shared. Welcome to my review of Stauning Barley Distillery Editions 2024. I recently visited the Stauning Distillery in Denmark on a recent holiday, and these are two bottles that I picked up at the end of the tour. Stauning itself dates back to 2006 when 9 friends got together to make Danish whiskey. They wanted to produce whiskey that was made with locally sourced ingredients and started in an old abattoir producing around 400 litres a year. Once they outgrew that site, they moved into an old farmhouse and they were producing up to 80,000 litres a year at its peak. Come 2018, with Diageo investment, and they were able to produce a brand new distillery. The distillery is the largest in continental Europe and has 24 direct-fired pot stills. They're well known for producing peated whiskey using locally sourced peat and sometimes heather, and they're also known for producing rye whiskey. These particular whiskies are both single malt and single cask, and they're also 4 years old. Shall we find out what they taste like? On to the whiskey. So the first whiskey is the Virgin American Oak. It's 50% ABV, it's 35 CL, and it retailed for around £40 converted in the UK. Let's have a quick look at the colour. It really does have a nice colour to this one. I'd say it's like an amber. Let's start with the nose. Right, so first thing I get on this is cherry. I'm getting like new wood, like freshly cut. I'm getting some malted cereal. I'm getting a little bit of furniture polish. And for me, there's also like a hint of like gherkin, like pickled gherkins. Reminds me a little bit of like a pastrami sandwich. Unusual, I know. Let's move on to the palate. Yeah, so it's quite sweet. I'm getting vanilla. There's like white sugar, like granulated white sugar. There's also a slight like woodiness to this, almost like a polished wood. But it's not unpleasant. Let's have another sip. There's a slight waxiness. Really coats the mouth well, I'd say. There's also lots of malted cereal with this, and a slight spirity note. Reminds me a bit of like linseed. It really is quite bold flavours. Let's have one final sip. Yeah, I'm getting a little bit of heat, a little bit of chili pepper. There's, as I said before, there's lots of wood, sort of definitely like a polished wood. It's changed from that I got on the nose. There's that cherry note that I picked up on the nose coming through as well. It reminds me of a malty bourbon. It's quite interesting, this one. In terms of finish, I'd say it's quite long. There's lots of charred oak. There's sweetness from like vanilla. There is definitely some heat and some pepper that lingers though. But yeah, it's quite interesting. It's very bold, but it's, yeah, I'd say it's not one that instantly warms to you. It's definitely something that I think needs a bit more time in the glass. I think it's definitely, I don't know, there's something about this that's not perfectly sort of constructed, but it's It's quite pleasant. Should we move on to the next one? So this is the Ex-bourbon Maker's Mark cask. It's 45.8%, it's 35 cl, and it retails for around the £40 mark when converted to UK. Should we have a quick look at the colour? I'd say that's quite light. It's like a pale straw. Really is quite light. Let's start with the nose. Right, so I'm getting some vanilla. I'm getting toffee. There's some caramel. I'm getting like digestive biscuits. There's a hint of ethanol. And there's a slight hint of fruit in there. Reminds me a little bit like strawberry shortcake. Let's move on to the palate. Yeah, so this has got quite a bit of sweetness. It's got vanilla, there's caramel. There's also some baking spices. I'm getting like cinnamon. It's quite soft on the palate as well. There's a little bit of fizziness. There's, yeah, that fizziness is only very light, but it's really quite nice on the palate indeed. Let's have another sip. Yeah, that fizziness is also bringing with it a slight floral note. There's also definitely a hint of like malted cereal. It's quite light. That sort of cereal's reminded me of wheat and oats. It's quite soft, but it's definitely there. And with that, it's also bringing a hint of linseed, like I picked up on the other whiskey. Let's have one final sip. Yeah, I'm not getting much more. The sort of real notes that come to the fore are the fizziness, the creamy sort of vanilla, toffee sweetness, and that sort of underlying sort of soft cereal note that lingers. In terms of finish, I'd say it's got a medium finish. There's a little bit of heat, a little bit of pepper, a little bit of dry oak, and that sweetness, that sort of vanilla, it definitely lingers with that. In terms of value for these two, well, obviously you can only buy them at the distillery. They had an offer where the more you bought, the cheaper they got. So the two of them together were 695 Danish kroner, which is just under £80. So it worked out about £40 a bottle. So it's £80 for a single cask, single malt whiskey. Obviously, they had rye whiskey, they had peated whiskey, they had different finishes, etc. But I wanted something that was fairly standard, fairly straightforward, unadulterated. And yeah, I just wanted to know what they could do with malted barley as their base spirit. And I think this definitely shows that it's a well-established distillery. Obviously, these are quite young though, at 4 years old. I think the whiskey itself would definitely, it would definitely benefit from more time. The Maker's Mark Ex-bourbon definitely shines a lot better than the Virgin Oak. I think the Virgin Oak is probably a little bit overpowering, but let's say you aged it for 4 years in the Virgin Oak and then put it in an Ex-bourbon for maybe another 4. I think this would be quite an interesting whiskey indeed. The ABVs are obviously quite low, 50% for the Virgin Oak and 45.8. So My guess would be that these have been watered down to that, to yield more bottles for tourists, but there is always, I suppose, a chance that these could be their true ABV, but I doubt it at such young ages. I think in terms of value though, at the sort of £40 mark, obviously you can only pick it up as a tourist sort of thing. Interestingly, I think things like a hand fill are quite good at distilleries, but the fact that the distillery has so many different combinations of whiskey that they can make, I suppose having a handful of different things may not suit people because, you know, different fans of Stauning prefer different flavour profiles. So I suppose having a good mix of, you know, half a dozen or more different types of whiskey that they can produce available for you to take home is probably the best option. And I suppose making so many different ones in such small volumes does bring a premium, but these could probably be a touch cheaper. Saying that, I still probably would have bought them, you know, if they were probably a touch more expensive or, you know, even a touch cheaper. But if they were a touch cheaper, I might have bought more. You never know. If you've been to the Stauning Distillery, please share your thoughts in the comments. As always, I'd love to hear what you think. And if you've tried any of these or any of the purely single malt malted barley expressions from Stauning, then also let me know in the comments, as I'd love to hear your thoughts. Hopefully you found this interesting, and hopefully I'll see you again soon. Sauncher. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, why not give it a like or a comment, and please consider subscribing for more videos like this.